It's March 27th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Starting with South Korean government's medical reform. The government remains firm on increasing medical school places by 2,000, though it did propose discussing next year's medical budget with the medical community. South Korea crushed Thailand 3-0 on Tuesday in Bangkok to stay atop of Group C in the Asian World Cup qualifiers, which means they've all but qualified for the next stage. 6 construction workers are presumed dead after Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed after it was struck by a large ship. A state of emergency has been declared throughout the city and the state of Maryland. The government said its push to realize the increased medical school enrollment quota is more firm than ever. But it also suggested that discussions on next year's medical budget take place with the medical community. Choi Soo-hyung starts us off.
The Korean government has once again made it clear that it will stick to its original plan to increase the medical school enrollment quota.
As of March 20th, we finalized the expansion of the country's medical school quota by 2,000 for the 2025 academic year, along with sorting out allocations for each school. We're moving ahead smoothly with the next steps, such as incorporating these changes into university admissions. The government will complete follow-up measures by May.
Meanwhile, on Tuesday, South Korean President Yoon visited a general hospital in Cheongju, Chungcheongbuk-do province, and proposed that the medical field discuss the healthcare budget for next year. Prime Minister Han Duk-soo also met with medical school leaders to propose dialogue between medical sector stakeholders. Also, to facilitate talks, the government has postponed the suspension of doctors' licenses who have walked out in protest.
The government will find flexible solutions for the administrative measures regarding the departure of trainee doctors from the medical field in order to minimize the medical service disruption.
The exodus of medical school professors nationwide continues. To show their solidarity with trainee doctors, on Monday, most of the country's 40 medical school professors submitted resignation letters, including almost 430 at Ulsan University and around 400 at Seoul National University.
Unless the government withdraws its plan to increase the medical school quota and allocation, this crisis cannot be resolved. We are ready to discuss all pending issues in front of the public, but I don't believe withdrawing the plan equals to eliminating the expansion entirely.
Amidst the confusion, a pediatrician Im Hyun-taek was elected on Tuesday evening as the new leader of the Korean Medical Association. However, there is speculation that may push for an even larger scale walkout because the newly elected individual has voiced opposition to the government's plan. To minimize disruption to patient care, the government says it will deploy an additional 1,900 physician assistant nurses alongside the current 5,000 deployed. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News.
Cheongju in Chungcheongbuk-do province will become a leading biotech base, President Yoon says. While promising a drastic increase in R&D investment, he has also laid out his plan to create the nation's own Boston biotech cluster there. Kim Do-yeon reports.
South Korea is looking to foster its advanced biotechnology industry's manufacturing capacity to 200 trillion Korean won by 2035. That's according to President Yoon on Tuesday as he held a policy discussion with citizens on the topic at the nation's bio-industry concentrated region of Cheongju, Chungcheongbuk-do province.
더욱이 지금은 첨단 바이오 분야가 전통적인 생명과학과 보건의료를 넘어 에너지, 소재, 식품, 환경을 비롯한 산업 전반에 혁신을 일으키고 있습니다. 또한 우리 인류가 직면한 여러 난제를 풀어가는 데에도 첨단 바이오 기술이 반드시 필요합니다.
He added that by that year, there will be 1,000 new startups in the industry annually, with the government's support. Also, the government will be looking to aggressively invest in R&D of advanced biotechnology, including digital bio, which combines the AI, digital, and bio sectors. He pledged that the nearby county of Osonggun, which hosts the nation's Food and Drug Safety Ministry and relevant bio companies, will be the next Boston cluster. This also includes attracting legal and consulting industries to the region, which would further develop the region in general. In addition, he said the make-or-break aspect of advanced biotechnology depends on how data are handled, pledging to create a biodata platform that integrates various biodata systems, providing services that researchers from industry, academia, research institutions, and hospitals want and need. He also spoke on the next pandemic, which he says many experts think is inevitable.
우리가 이제 이 백신 기술에 대한 우리 백신 주권을 이제 확보하기 위해서 또 다른 팬데믹이 오더라도 신속하게 우리 국민의 체질에 맞는 백신을 개발하기 위해서 일단 mRNA 이 백신 개발에 착수할 것입니다.
In the meantime, he also emphasized the importance of local public education in the region. He said a specialized high school in the bio industry will be open to foster talent in the field, while Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology's local campus will work with local government for educational opportunities. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
South Korean chipmaker SK hynix will invest around $4 billion to build an advanced chip packaging facility in the U.S. state of Indiana. According to the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, the plant will specialize in stacking standard dynamic random access memory chips to create high bandwidth memory before they're integrated with NVIDIA's GPUs. The report said that the facility is expected to begin operations in 2028, adding 800 to 1,000 new jobs in the area. SK hynix will receive a number of related financial support packages, including tax incentives. The move also comes as SK Group Choi Tae-won met with U.S. President Joe Biden in 2022 and pledged to invest $22 billion in U.S.-based semiconductor, green energy, and bioscience projects. For the first time since the war began in October, the UN Security Council has called for a ceasefire in Gaza after several failed attempts. Now, what would that mean for Israel and Hamas? We're joined by Professor Austin Newbed this morning. Welcome back.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be back.
Thanks for joining us. First off, why did it take so long, 6 months, to issue such a call?
Well, it primarily hinges on the political tension between President Biden in the United States and President Netanyahu in Israel. The Biden administration is trying to draw a line between support for Israel on the one hand and drawing a critique of Netanyahu on the other. Nonetheless, the abstention from the UN Security Council vote came 3 or 4 months too late.
Right, Professor Newbed, you wrapped it up nicely. That was because the U.S. didn't block the UN ceasefire this time. Now, then where did Washington's decision come from this time?
Well, I think it was primarily a political move. It signaled displeasure with Netanyahu's decision to ignore Washington's advice about the impeding offensive in Rafah. At the same time, Israel's defense minister is in Washington, D.C., negotiating further arms transfer deals. And so it was mostly a political signal as opposed to a substantive policy change.
Right. Professor Newbed, I have to stress how the U.S. said the UN Security Council resolution is, quote, non-binding, which became quite controversial. What's the controversy here?
Well, spokesperson John Kirby was trying to make a distinction between binding resolutions and non-binding. It's a legal point of legal minutia at the United Nations. It's primarily a distinction without a difference. It's a way of the United States trying to, on the one hand, abstain from the ceasefire resolution, on the other, say that there's less distance between the United States and Tel Aviv than actually exists. So it's primarily a political point. It's not a substantive difference in international law.
Would you say there is no shift in U.S. policy from now on?
There's increasing tension between the Biden administration and Netanyahu's coalition, But U.S. policy towards Israel has remained largely unchanged, with the exception of some air delivery aid and the opening of a relief port on the Gaza shore. U.S. is still approving arms transfers. Just the other day, the United States said that Israel is in compliance with a national security memorandum that said arms recipients must abide by international law and respect human rights. So on the one hand, we're abstaining from votes in the United Nations. On the other, we're saying that Israel is in compliance with international humanitarian law. So
Right.
U.S. policy has fundamentally remained unchanged.
Right, but Israel was so unhappy with the U.S. decision that it canceled the delegation's White House visit, which also disappointed the Washington side. Now, what is Washington expected to do now then?
Well, a lot will have to be seen what comes out of the visit of Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant's visit to Washington, whether or not the Biden administration approves further arms transfers to Israel. That's going to be a signal of substantive U.S. policy, as opposed to an abstention at the UN or a decision to cancel a meeting. Those are mostly political ploys and not they don't reflect serious political or policy disagreement between both parties.
Right. So finally, a UN ceasefire call for the first time in 6 months. Now, what does that UN call for a ceasefire mean? I mean, what changes will the call bring?
Right. So the most recent resolution that was brought before the Security Council includes an immediate ceasefire of for the remaining time of Ramadan. That's 2 weeks, in conjunction with the release of all 130 some remaining hostages.
Right. So it took 6 months to draw a UN resolution. Now, Professor Nube,
right.
I know this is a very difficult question. It's been 6 months since the war broke out. Now, how do you expect the war to unfold for the next 6 months?
So what we've seen in parallel to the vote at the United Nations was a breakdown of further hostage negotiations in Gaza in Qatar. So, but just today, the Israeli delegation left Doha, saying there was no use in further negotiations. So those negotiations seem to be on pause. I think a lot hinges on Israel's decision vis-a-vis Rafah. If the military offensive continues south, the Biden administration has said that's a red line for U.S. support for Israel, but time will tell whether or not the U.S. demurs to IDF actions in Rafah and what happens with the unfolding humanitarian crisis. You have increasing famine and increasing child starvation and other medical maladies plaguing Gazan civilians that are only getting worse with each additional day that the conflict continues.
Definitely. All right, Professor Nube, thank you so much for your insight as always and your time this morning. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much.
South Korea's men's national football put their recent struggles behind them Tuesday night with a 3-0 win over Thailand in their World Cup qualifier match in Bangkok. Now, the win was all the more significant as the two footballers who scuffled in last month's Asian Cup connected to produce a goal. Lee Seung-ja has more.
After a disappointing 1-1 draw in front of a sold-out crowd in Seoul last week, the South Korean national football team took on Thailand again on Tuesday night, this time in Bangkok. The team looked much more composed in the return World Cup qualifying fixture, cruising to a 3-0 victory. The Taeguk Warriors took the lead in the first half when striker Jo Kyu-sung's close-range shot in the 19th minute was tapped in by Lee Jae-sung. Captain Son Heung-min scored in his second straight match after the break to give South Korea a 2-0 lead. And who better to link up with Son for the second goal than Lee Gang-in, who was mired in a controversy after the AFC Asian Cup last month when it was reported that the two scuffled over a game of table tennis a day before their semifinal match against Jordan, which led to an injured finger for Son. Lee suffered heavy criticism from fans for what they said was inappropriate behavior toward the highly respected Son, which led to a public apology from Lee after he joined the national team last week. But it seems they have put their troubles behind them as they celebrated the second goal of the match with Lee jumping into the arms of Son. Hyundai FC midfielder Park Jin-sup, a second-half substitute, marked his international debut with a goal to make it 3 and seal the win.
The win means South Korea now lead Group C with 10 points after 4 matches, while Thailand dropped down to third in the group. China are 3 points behind and second in the group following a 4-1 win over Singapore last night. South Korea plays both Singapore and China in June. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
A major incident in the U.S. state of Maryland, where a cargo ship collided with the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore on Tuesday, causing its collapse. Search and rescue efforts are underway with 6 members of a road construction crew still unaccounted for. Shin Se-byuk reports.
On Tuesday, the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland, U.S. collapsed after a massive cargo ship, which officials say lost power, crashed into it.
A Singapore-registered vessel with the name Dali, D-A-L-I, which made contact with the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore, Maryland, at around 1:30 a.m. this morning.
2 people were pulled from the river below following the accident. One was rescued with no major injury, and the other was taken to hospital, reportedly in a serious condition. Search and rescue efforts are ongoing for 6 members of a road crew who are working on the bridge, but according to an official from their construction firm, they are presumed dead, considering the depth of water and length of time since the collision. Maryland Governor Wes Moore said in a briefing on Tuesday that the vessel signaled a problem with its power, leading authorities to stop traffic on the bridge between the ship's mayday call and the collision, noting the warning likely saved lives. The port of Baltimore, where the Key Bridge was positioned, stands as the U.S. premier hub for automobile imports and exports, as it's deemed a key entry point to the eastern U.S. and the Atlantic Ocean. In the aftermath of the disaster, the Maryland state government declared a state of emergency and put an indefinite hold on port operations, potentially impacting the domestic auto supply chain. Following the accident, U.S. President Joe Biden held a briefing where he said he would visit Baltimore at the earliest opportunity. He reassured the public that although investigations into the cause of the accident are ongoing, there is no indication of terrorism.
At this time, we have no other indication, no other reason to believe there's any intentional act here.
Biden stressed the importance of concentrating on search and rescue efforts at this time, with plans to promptly move forward with bridge reconstruction. He also pledged that the federal government will pay the full cost of rebuilding the Key Bridge and asked for the cooperation of Congress in this matter. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
And I have a live interview.
Good morning. I'm Kim Ji-young, and now we turn over to stories from around the world. Russia's top officials have directly accused the West and Ukraine of being involved in the deadly concert hall attack just outside of Moscow that killed at least 139 on Friday. While the Islamic State claimed it carried out the attack and released footage of the atrocity, Russian authorities said the jihadists were assisted by Western intelligence. Russian President Vladimir Putin said in a televised meeting on Monday that we want to know who ordered it, while acknowledging radical Islamist movement in the attack. Following Putin's comments, Russia's Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev on Tuesday, when asked whether the Islamic State or Ukraine was behind the attack, said, of course, Ukraine. The head of Russia's Federal Security Service, Alexander Bortnikov, also on Tuesday went further to say that while IS carried out the attack, it was obviously facilitated by Western special services, saying that Ukraine's special services had a direct connection to the attack. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky denied Ukraine's involvement, saying Putin was talking to himself again. Again, he blames Ukraine, a sick and cynical creature. 15 days before the attack, the US had warned Moscow of an imminent extremist attack on Russia. China on Tuesday denied the US and UK's accusations of Beijing being behind large-scale cyber espionage targeting journalists, corporations, government entities and activists. The denial comes after the UK on Monday imposed sanctions on 2 Chinese nationals and a company, while the US charged 7 Chinese individuals for cyber attack campaigns. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said at a daily news briefing in Beijing that this is a typical political manipulation and that the US and UK once again hyped up the so-called Chinese cyber attacks. The US Justice Department on Monday charged 7 hackers of Chinese nationality who are allegedly members of the Chinese state-affiliated cyber espionage group, nicknamed the Advanced Persistent Threat Group 31. APT 31 began its campaign in 2010 with intention to report and harass critics of the Chinese Communist Party and engage in corporate and political espionage. The British government imposed sanctions on 2 Chinese nationals and Wuhan Zhaoruizi Science and Technology Company, which the UK alleges to be working for the APT 31. Now moving over to northwest Pakistan, a suicide bomber rammed an explosive-laden car into a vehicle carrying Chinese workers on Tuesday, killing a total of 6 people. 5 Chinese nationals working as construction workers and engineers on a dam project died, as well as their Pakistani driver in the attack in the district of Shangla. The 5 Chinese engineers were working on the Dasu Dam, Pakistan's biggest hydropower project. The attack comes less than a week after a vehicle carrying Chinese citizens came under fire from Balochistan Liberation Army militants outside the Chinese-funded Gov't port in the volatile southwestern Balochistan province. Thousands of Chinese laborers work in Shangla as part of the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, an area of significant investment as part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Over the past 2 days, a joint operation by Colombian and American authorities has seized over 5 tons of cocaine in 2 anti-narcotics operations. The Colombian armed forces and the United States on Monday stopped a vessel carrying over 3.3 tons of cocaine hydrochloride after a high-speed chase at sea off the coast of San Andreas Island. On Tuesday, authorities seized 1.7 tons of cocaine hidden in boxes of avocados in the coastal city of Santa Marta.
Good morning. It's a foggy start to the day for southern provinces. In fact, Gwangju, Muan, and Cheongju International Airport are under a low visibility warning, so please check your travel schedule this morning and also drive with care. Meanwhile, highs will soar today, rising 2 to 9 degrees higher than Tuesday across Korea. But morning temperatures are similar to slightly lower this morning, which will lead to wide temperature swings of 15 degrees Celsius between lows and highs in some parts. But overall, we can look forward to fine early spring weather today under mostly sunny skies with decent air quality nationwide. Seoul and Busan will hike up to 16 degrees Celsius, Jeju at 17 degrees. Then there's another round of rain in the forecast tomorrow, starting in the west and Jeju spreading nationwide by the afternoon. That more calm and promising weather in store from Friday with spring flower blooming season right around the corner. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That wraps up today's New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow for Thursday's edition at the same time, 9 a.m. Korea time.